الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. The topic for today is entitled Runaway Rationality. I am not a disembodied intellect or aql. Far from it. My intellect or aql functions within the divinely crafted holistic system composed of my heart, my lower self, and my senses. My intellect does not function independently from these other elements that constitute my human reality. What is this relationship exactly? To put it as succinctly as possible, the intellect or the aql is the executive officer of the qalb or the heart. The intellect rationalizes, plans, and executes the dictates of the heart. Once the heart resolves on a matter based on its perception and emotional drives, the intellect directs the senses to effect the edict. The Qur'an often mentions the intellect or aql in the context of the rational perception of the heart or the qalb. For example, Allah says in the Qur'an, "They have hearts that they do not reason with." And in another verse, "Do they not travel in the land and have hearts that they reason with?" A critical point follows. Although the decision maker is the heart or the qalb, and we have established that previously, the heart is strongly affected by the identity of the lower self or nafs in one or a permutation of its four realities, either cow-like, predatory, satanic, or angelic. And therefore, the wild card in the spiritual equation that exists between the heart, the lower self, the intellect, and the senses is the lower self or the nafs. The nafs is the wild card. It's the wild card because if the lower self is angelic, the heart will take on the nafs or the lower self's angelic identity. If the lower self is cow-like, predatory, or satanic, the heart will be influenced by those tendencies in its perception, experience, and will, and the heart will subsequently command the intellect, who will direct the senses and limbs to speak and to act. The link between the intellect, the aql, and the lower self or nafs should now be apparent. When traced back to their source, the rationalization, the planning, and the execution function of the intellect in its normative sense or normative extension really simply reflects the propensities, whether carnal or ideological, of the lower self. My intellect is not autonomous. Pure rationality in matters of normative judgment is a fiction. As a Western thinker once noted, reason is the slave of the passions. It cannot pretend to any other office other than to serve and obey them. What drives many of my decisions is the spiritual maturity or lack thereof of my lower self or my nafs. Consider some examples. Why do rocket scientists not believe in God? Why do I not accept the clear and rational truth presented to me when that truth conflicts with the self-interest that I perceive? Why do I rationalize my errors with argument when I know deep down that I am wrong? Why do I insist on certain strategic decisions in advocacy and activism, those decisions that are inconsistent when studied more closely under the illuminating light of the sacred law? And why do I jettison expressions of spirituality that necessitate closer scrutiny and discipline over the drives of my lower self? These questions and many more can often be understood with greater clarity once I become more spiritually mature and more self-reflective about this interconnectedness between my intellect and aql and my lower self and nafs. And these questions and many more can be understood with greater clarity once I acquiesce and commit to my own spiritual evolution and my own spiritual refinement. And ultimately, there's nothing more rational than that. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.